Welcome back to the Wisdom Couple podcast, everyone.
Hey there, good to be back.
Welcome to our another podcast. Today, we're diving into something really big, a topic that's just everywhere online in conversations. Cancel culture.
Mm-hmm.
Is it, actually helping us move forward as a society, or is it maybe causing more problems than it solves? It feels like you can't avoid it online.
No, you really can't. It's definitely a major thing right now, and it sparks such intense debate, doesn't it?
It really does.
And, for good reason. It forces us to confront how we handle accountability, especially now with everything being so digital and connected.
Totally. So maybe for listeners who are a bit newer to the term, when we say cancel culture, what are we actually talking about? Lay it out for us.
Okay, so at its heart, it's basically this widespread withdrawal of support. It happens online, sometimes offline too.
Right.
Usually targeted at a public figure, maybe a company, after they've done or said something that a lot of people find offensive or just unacceptable. Think of it like a mass public disapproval.
Yeah, and that disapproval, it takes different forms, right? Like you see the online call-outs, the public shaming.
Exactly. Or boycotting someone's work, their product.
Putting pressure on employers, even trying to get them fired.
Yeah, all of that. And public disapproval isn't new, obviously. People have been shunned for behavior forever.
Sure.
But the internet just gives it this incredible speed and reach, something we've never really seen before.
Okay, so it's like public accountability, but amplified, massively amplified. Let's dig into that a bit. When did this specific term, cancel culture, really become common?
Well, the term itself really started gaining momentum, getting popular around 2018. That's when it seemed to enter the mainstream vocabulary.
2018, okay.
Though you also hear call-out culture, which focuses maybe more on that initial act of pointing out the perceived wrong.
Got it. So 2018, it hits the mainstream. Now, walk us through the typical process. What happens when someone gets, quote unquote, canceled?
It usually kicks off with an accusation, right? Someone says, this person did or said this thing, and it's wrong.
Okay.
Then, boom, it gets shared widely, especially on social media, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, wherever. It can spread incredibly fast.
Like wildfire.
Exactly. And that momentum often leads to people online demanding action, boycotts, public apologies.
Or worse, like losing jobs, brand deals.
Precisely. And the end result for the person or the group targeted can be pretty severe, real hits to their career, their social life, their whole reputation.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds incredibly high stakes. But okay, there's always another side, right?
Yeah.
What are the arguments for it? Why do some people see it as a positive, even necessary thing?
Well, one of the main arguments, and it's a powerful one, is accountability, especially for people in positions of power or influence.
Right.
The idea is that cancel culture can step in when, traditional systems fail. Think about the hashtag #MeToo movement. A lot of people argue that collective online pressure was crucial in bringing consequences for figures like, say, Harvey Weinstein, in ways the legal system maybe hadn't quickly enough.
That's true. I remember reading that something like, over 80% of sexual harassment cases don't even end up in court.
Exactly. So proponents see this as a way to achieve some form of justice or accountability outside those formal channels. It's like democratizing accountability in a way.
Okay, that makes sense.
What else? Another point is amplifying voices, giving a platform to marginalized groups who might usually be overlooked or ignored.
How so?
Take the Goya Foods boycott, for example. After their CEO praised a certain political figure, there was this huge pushback, largely from the Latino community online. It showed how collective action could make their perspective impossible to ignore and apply real economic pressure.
So it's a tool for collective action, giving power to groups who might not have traditional levers of power.
Exactly. And some also argue it helps shape our cultural values.
Right.
It's like society collectively deciding, okay, this is no longer acceptable.
Like what kind of things?
Well, think about blackface in the media. It's become largely unacceptable now, right? Or retiring old, kind of racist brand mascots.
Yeah, good point.
Some believe the threat of being canceled actually plays a part in pushing these kinds of cultural shifts forward. There was even a study showing a majority of Gen Z see it as important for progress on things like LGBTQ+ rights.
So viewing it as almost an engine for positive social change.
Yeah.
But, okay, let's get to the other side. The criticisms. There are a lot of concerns, too. What are the main documented harms?
Oh, definitely. A really big one is the potential chilling effect on free speech and open discourse.
Meaning people are afraid to speak up.
Yeah. The fear of saying the wrong thing, of facing this huge online backlash, of potentially being canceled, it might make people hesitant to share their opinions, ask questions, or even research certain topics.
Even in places where you'd expect open debate, like universities.
Absolutely. Surveys have shown significant numbers of academics, journalists, even people in regular corporate jobs admit to self-censoring. They hold back to avoid the potential storm. Imagine researchers shying away from important but controversial topics just out of fear.
That feels like it could really stifle learning and, finding truth.
It's a serious concern. And then there's the mental health impact, which can be devastating.
For the person being targeted.
Yes. People who go through this often report incredibly high levels of anxiety, depression. Some even contemplate self-harm. It's not just online comments. It's real, severe psychological distress.
Wow. That's incredibly serious. A heavy price to pay.
It really is. And it's not just the targets either. Even people just witnessing these pile-ons can feel stressed, anxious about accidentally stepping on a landmine themselves, saying the wrong thing.
So it creates this kind of general climate of fear almost, like walking on eggshells online.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And then there's a whole question of fairness, due process.
What do you mean by that?
Well, a major criticism is that it often lacks basic fairness. Accusations fly around online, go viral, but are they always properly verified? Often not.
So based on potentially shaky ground.
Right. And the person being targeted might not get a real chance to respond, to provide context, maybe even to apologize sincerely if they did mess up.
No opportunity for nuance or redemption?
Sometimes it feels that way. And if they lose their job over it, was there a proper HR investigation? Did it follow procedure? Studies suggest often not. It gets described as digital vigilantism, swift judgment, life-altering consequences, maybe based on unproven claims.
So someone's life can be turned upside down without that basic level of fairness or investigation.
That's the critique, yeah. And looking at specific sectors, like the corporate world, while, maybe the fear of cancellation pushes some good things like diversity initiatives.
There's a but.
There's a risk of it just being performative. Companies doing things for show just to avoid backlash, getting cancel insurance through audits and PR teams, but maybe not making real substantive changes.
Right, it becomes a PR exercise, not genuine change. What about in politics? How does it play out there?
Oh, in politics, it often seems very partisan. You see accusations fly, but the standards applied might look different depending on whether the person is liberal or conservative.
Double standard.
That's the concern, yeah. And also, politicians might just avoid certain policy ideas altogether, even good ones, if they think it might trigger an online mob, which could really limit the kinds of debates we have.
Narrowing the conversation. Now, you mentioned this isn't just a U.S. or Western thing. How does it look different elsewhere?
Yeah, it's really interesting to see the cultural flavors. In India, for instance, a lot of the cancellation incidents are deeply tied up with sensitive issues like religion and caste. Bollywood celebrities get targeted quite often. And worryingly, there have been cases involving actual physical threats, which seems less common, thankfully, in many Western instances.
Wow.
Remember that jewelry ad, Tanishq, about an interfaith couple? The backlash was huge, and it really showed how local cultural and religious contexts dramatically shape these conflicts.
That definitely adds layers of complexity.
Yeah.
Are any countries trying different approaches, maybe legally?
Some are. Germany is an interesting example. They have pretty strict hate speech laws already, right? And they've actually brought in reforms. They require social media platforms to act faster in taking down unsubstantiated cancellation posts, things deemed harassment. They can even fine users.
Really?
Yeah. And they also have rules aimed at giving the targeted person a chance to respond. It's an attempt to build in more checks and balances, more process.
Trying to find that balance between free speech and protection from harm. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. What's going on psychologically here? Why do these things snowball so easily online?
Yeah, the psychology is fascinating.
Yeah.
And kind of scary. There's the whole mob mentality aspect.
Right.
Online, especially with anonymity or pseudonymity, people can feel less individually responsible for harsh judgments. It's called de-individuation.
Lost in the crowd.
Exactly. Plus, social media algorithms, they tend to show us stuff we already agree with, right?
The echo chamber effect.
Precisely. So if you're outraged about something, the algorithm feeds you more outrage, reinforcing your view. That's confirmation bias at work. And then there's something called moral grandstanding. It's basically people competing to show how morally outraged or virtuous they are, often by demanding the most extreme punishments for the person being canceled. It escalates things.
Like trying to outdo each other in condemnation.
Sort of, yeah. And another really tough psychological dimension is rehabilitation, or the lack of it.
What do you mean?
Well, the internet never forgets, right? Even if someone apologizes, learns, tries to make amends, their past mistake can be dredged up years later with a simple search. It leads to renewed criticism, renewed pile-ons. It makes it incredibly difficult for someone to actually move on and demonstrate change. It's like a digital life sentence almost.
That sounds exhausting and kind of hopeless for someone trying to recover. Okay, looking forward then, where might this all be heading? Any predictions?
Experts speculate on a few paths. Maybe platforms get better, develop smarter moderation to filter out baseless accusations. That's one possibility.
The optimistic view.
Perhaps. A more worrying thought is harassment escalating in new spaces, like virtual reality environments. Imagine cancellation tactics in the metaverse. Oh, wow.
Or even companies trying to strategically cancel competitors. Using these tactics for corporate gain, it's all pretty uncertain.
So, a lot of potential directions, not all good. Given all this complexity, what's the takeaway? How do we navigate this?
It's tough. I think finding a better way forward, balancing accountability with fairness and, the possibility of redemption, it's going to need effort from lots of places.
Not just one solution.
No way. Platforms need to think hard about verification and amplification. Employers need clear, fair HR processes. Education is key, digital literacy, critical thinking. And maybe there is a role for law in protecting against extreme online harassment while still protecting speech. It needs everyone involved.
So, as you can clearly tell, this whole thing, cancel culture.
Yeah.
It's incredibly complex, no easy answers.
Not at all. There are definitely strong arguments on both sides about whether it's ultimately a net positive or negative for society.
We've talked about it as a tool for accountability, for amplifying marginalized voices. But also the real dangers of chilling speech, the serious mental health consequences, the lack of due process.
It leaves us with a big question, doesn't it? What do you listening think is the right balance here? How do we hold people accountable for real harm without just creating this pervasive climate of fear and permanent digital condemnation?
Yeah, it's something we all need to keep thinking about, wrestling with.
Absolutely. We would genuinely love to hear your thoughts on this one. Drop them in the comments below. And hey, if you found this conversation useful, please do give us a like and subscribe to the Wisdom Couple podcast for more discussions like this.
Yeah, let us know what you think.
That was so much for tuning in today. We'll catch you next time. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone. Take care.